welcome to episode 37 of Last Turn. I'm your host, Bart, and I'm here with Evan, my co-host, as always. How are you doing, Evan?
Hey, I'm doing so great, Bart. Thanks for asking. It's a new day. It's almost a new season. We've got one day. Today is the 31st, upon which we record this, and it's almost a new June season. And the balance changes just happened, so things have been really, unpredictable. Is a good word for it.
Yeah. I think Hearthstone is at its most interesting around the times of, nerfs, balance changes, and sets coming out.
Yeah, certainly, when standard shifts, that's the best time.
Yeah, for sure. So I've also been really, enjoying that. I think that, the balance changes cleared the way for a lot of long-standing top contenders to move to the back line a bit. So we've seen a lot of decks that were maybe more in the fringes just come up and become more powerful, which is really cool.
Yeah, that has been really fun because there were when standard rotated, there were a bunch of ideas that I tried and surely not just me. And then they all lost to Q-Block.
Yeah.
And it was really frustrating, except for Hadronox. That one somehow worked. That's still a miracle.
Yeah, I mean that deck is sweet.
Yeah, but now so that deck is better. That's now a real thing, and a bunch of other decks that were cute but not good enough are working. I think there's a hunter deck and a shaman deck and maybe even a warrior deck.
Yeah, it's shocking to see wings again. I thought that we were just not going to see that class until the next set came out, and then maybe not even then. So it's pretty awesome to see. It's pretty awesome to see that deck, and it's sweet.
Yeah, the Shutterwalk deck you're talking about.
I mean, I'm
or just
to Even Shaman. I think that's Even Shaman's been both Even Shaman and Shutterwalk have been on the ladder.
Yeah, so there's two Shaman decks from zero.
Yeah, exactly, and that's infinitely more. So
it sure is, buddy. It's because they got hosed kind of pretty badly in Knights of the Frozen Throne. With the cryostasis, we talked a lot about that already, and then also they didn't really get much from kobolds or the more recent or they didn't get much from kobolds, but it does seem and so when they lost things like Maelstrom Portal and Jade Claws, and suddenly cryostasis became a bigger percentage of their card pool.
It's a terrible place to be.
Yeah, things seem grim. Like you said, might not get better till next set, but it looks like they found a way. They picked a good set of cards to tone down to let every class have a deck. I think every class is a deck right now.
Yeah, it's really great. I mean, I think that that might be a symptom of it still being relatively early after the balance changes, right? So if things are volatile, so people are trying all kinds of wacky stuff, I think especially as statistics and tournament results come out, the representation of class on the ladder is going to sort of relax to the top decks. That tends to be how it works.
Yeah, this is, very, very likely to be temporary.
Yeah, but it's still seems like it's a pretty open world. I mean, it's a really nice thing to see shaman decks back on the ladder. For example, I think that's a sign of just general health. Maybe they did something right.
Yeah, and not even only a super gimmicky thing that might have only come about by accident.
Yeah, sure.
But something very obviously purposeful, like Merkspark Eel. That was, a card that looked like this could be good. The words on this card are good words.
Mm-hmm.
If you could just make it work. And I think at the beginning, Merkspark Eel was hard to appreciate because you're we're losing Jade Claws and Maelstrom Portal. Why would we want to make a deck that's only even cards? But they made Hex playable. I don't even know if that's in the list. Oh yeah, it is. There's a Hex.
Yeah, there's a Hex shows up in some of the even shaman lists. Like, I was playing around with that deck a little bit, because I played it a bunch in Wild, where it's, like, really, really, really excellent. And, yeah, Hex appears sometimes. I mean, I'm not really totally convinced that it's necessary, but it's nice. It's definitely an option the deck has, depending on the rest of the metagame.
Yeah, I mean, if you expect a lot of token druid, you're gonna be really happy you're packing a Hex.
Yeah, I mean, or a Hadronox deck, or any deck that's looking to just play big dudes, like, control warlocks that aren't even.
Yeah, that's what I meant, the Hadronox deck. What did I say?
Token.
Yeah, no, not token. Taunt.
I see. Yeah, it
is confusing.
I wasn't sure, like, if token was, like, correct or not, because the deck title Token Druid has referred to so many distinct decks with distinct strategies.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's, like, the low to the ground aggro decks, it's referred to eggs, it's referred to that Taunt Druid deck which runs Ultimate Infestation, and now it refers to, like, a totally different deck.
Yeah, I was looking at my Hearthstone deck tracker, and I noticed I have a deck called Token Druid, and a deck called Tokens, and a deck called Token, and then they're all different. Just like you said, completely different times of Hearthstone. Yeah.
I always found that funny with that particular deck title. It's just, like, not a very informative one, whereas many other, like, Miracle Rogue kind of always does the same thing, or, like, Face Hunter is just basically the same deck every time, but Token Druid can refer to an extremely wide range of decks. Yeah. Or Tempo Mage. Tempo Mage can too.
This should be like Wisp Druid or something like that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so I meant Taunt Druid Hex, because it gives them a beast will just devastate their life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it could also just get rid of their Hadronox, if they decide to get greedy about playing it. So it's, or, they get it off O-Card or something without Naturalize in hand.
And you wouldn't be able to do that if they hadn't nerfed it.
Yeah, it's true.
So that's kind of cute. The stars are aligning.
Yeah, that's been really interesting, actually. Like, the impact of the cost nerfs has been a lot greater because of the presence of odd and even decks. So nerfing the cost or adjusting the cost of a card, up one or actually even down one can completely remove a card from a deck's arsenal. So it's like, in the case of Even Paladin, for example, changing the cost of Call to Arms to 5 just removed that card from the deck. And that was like the card in the deck. That was like the reason it worked. So you just obliterated that deck from the ladder.
Yeah, that was sitting on a lot of, because there's a lot of different websites that, like, rate the decks and stuff, and it was at number 1 on a lot of them. And
sure.
when it wasn't, it was number 2 for the most part. And now, I was playing a bunch of Hearthstone to try and get Legendary these past few days, and I haven't seen any Paladins, or, like, maybe 1 or 2.
Yeah, it's a lot less common. I mean, I think Odd Paladin's always going to be prevalent at, like, the lower ranks, because it's a really cheap deck that wins pretty easily. But,
not many legendaries.
Yeah. As you get a little bit higher rank, people like opt for decks that are a little less high rolly, with a little more play to them, and probably just a little stronger in general.
One example of that maybe is Odd Rogue. I started seeing that very frequently.
Yeah, that's a really common face deck that I see as well. I played actually a lot of Rogue in the past several days because, like I told you before we started recording, I just got Golden Valera, and I was trying, it's like so close, so I wanted to find a Rogue deck I liked, and I was playing a bunch of Odd Rogue, and yeah, it's a really strong, aggressive deck.
Yeah, it's a lot like Tempo Rogue, but you just don't have cards that are even costed, and you do have an amazing hero power.
Yes. I mean, if you thought the Rogue hero power was great before Baku, it's insane after Baku. Yeah, it's interesting. It feels a lot more like facey than Tempo Rogue did. Tempo Rogue is a lot like a mid-range deck, and it feels like a mid-range deck where you're playing for value a lot of the time. But in Odd Rogue, it feels like you're playing. You're swinging. You have tempo swings because you have SI7 agent, you have Vial Spine, but you also are just like hitting your opponent with your dagger a lot more often.
Yeah, you got usually 2 Cold Bloods and 2 another card that does 4 damage if you want it to. that? I already forgot. The poison on your dagger.
Oh, yeah, the deadly poison.
Deadly poison. And your hero power is more similar to Hunter's than it was before. So it makes sense that you just kind of play a lot more like a face hunter, where you are popping their face for 2 every turn, so that adds up. Plus you have all these cheap ways to blast on extra damage.
Yeah, definitely. But, again, you still have the big tempo swing cards that make minion-based rogue a deck.
Yeah.
So, I played a lot, like I said, I played a lot of different rogue decks. Not all of them are really amazing, but I think Odd Rogue is definitely different. But regular old Tempo Rogue is still a deck. You can throw it together and it can win games.
Yeah, that can use Eviscerate deck, or Kaliseth.
Kaliseth, yeah.
Which you cannot use in Baku. Well, talking about nerfs, you can, I don't know if you should, probably shouldn't, but you can use Bone Mare in Classic Tempo Rogue. You cannot use Bone Mare in Baku Rogue.
Be insane if you could use Bone Mare in Odd Rogue.
Yeah, see, that did not work out for the class, unlike the Hex nerf.
Right. Bone Mare at 7 was just an insane card. So I actually was playing Singleton Bone Mare for a bit in my Tempo Rogue deck, but, you can also run, like, Lich King. I think Shadow Step and Backstab, those are really, really important.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been fun, but, it's probably just not as good as Odd Rogue altogether.
The Lich King is good, I think.
Yeah, it is.
That I'd probably use the Lich King before the first Bone Mare.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing. I was 1-1.
That could be good.
I don't. It's like it feels like nothing is super duper fast right now, so that was okay. That was actually the one thing I've noticed is kind of an absence of too many aggressive decks that are really weak to having their minions removed.
Yeah, I think probably the fastest deck would be Odd Rogue.
Yeah, I think so too. And they just have so much like damage in their weapon that they can like rebuild pretty easily because all they need to do is just like stick one minion and just keep hitting you with the daggers, and they can steal the game like that.
Yeah, I've been seeing them play Vicious Fledgling, which has been really annoying because they're so good at clearing your minions with their weapon.
Oh, yes.
That can be brutal. And then they'll just be greedy and like cold-blood it. If they untap with it and try and just get there with the Wind Fury. So that could be really devastating. Like they could just high roll you early on. And then Firefly, there's like no commitment. The Thug just becomes enormous once again, barely any commitment. And then they have charge minions like Leroy, the Deckhands, to go with the Cold Bloods, so they can always get that damage in. Yeah,
they have a surprising amount of damage from hand, as Rogue typically does. So it's been pretty cool. But so I think that you got Legend with Even Warlock. Why don't you talk to us about that deck a little bit?
Sure. So it's kind of maybe deceptive what type of deck it is because it does have a lot of clear. So it looks like it could be control, but it's definitely like mid-range. And you're just trying to stick lots of fat minions and smash your opponent till they die. It's not terribly complicated. But because you get an extra card like every other turn for just 1 mana, it's really easy to get ahead of your opponent. Like card value wise, it's not hard, and a lot of your minions are just like a really good deal. Like Mountain Giant is the best, and you're always trying to mulligan for that. And you can play it on turn 3 if you're on the draw, which is really powerful. That's one of the sort of like high rolls of the deck.
That's awesome.
And you can just stack Mountain Giants and start attacking and not be afraid of losing value because your hand's just never going to run out of stuff. You're also using Twilight Drake, another really good deal stat wise. So you can just use that to every time they play a minion, just kill it with your Twilight Drake. Eventually, they will run out of stuff and you won't because you get to keep tapping for cheap. And then, if a deck tries to swarm you, you have the 2 Hellfires, 2 Defiles, and 2 Dread Infernals, which has been very relevant with Token Druid running around now.
Yeah,
Whisper Druid.
Pretty insane that you get both Defile and Hellfire, which is like that's like the package.
Yeah, that's the sweet stuff. You get the next thing you would want would probably be the legendary guy.
Godfrey.
Yeah, but you can't play it, which works out great for me. It's another reason I play the deck. I don't own one, and this is an excuse not to craft it. It's like, well, I can't play it in this Warlock.
I've managed to avoid crafting him as well.
Yeah, I've been pulling it off. And this is just another way to do it. And you don't really need to, worry too much about single target removal, in my experience. You're just kind of playing minions and bashing your opponent, and if they get too much stuff, you clear everything and start from scratch. And it's got Gul'dan in it. So it can't really lose. Like, the late game plan in the deck is just unreal. Plus, you also get Rin. So against the control deck, if you can get Rin early, you can just... I think you saw my game where I got Legend. I just got Rin early against Taunt Warrior, and they just had to scoop.
Yep, right on the spot.
There was nothing they were gonna be able to do at that point. So you got a lot of really good tools versus control in Mountain Giant just crushing their face, and then Gul'dan and Rin, and then the aggro decks you get to wipe all their stuff.
Yeah, it seems. It seems like you just get a lot of the tools that the other decks had, and I was thinking a lot about which classes would be good with Gen, and I sort of landed on it just being like, if your hero power can in some way just give you like a permanent value or permanent tempo. And I kind of wrote Warlock off, but I guess having access to the 1 mana tap is really that good.
It definitely is. Because it's a great thing to do turn 1. Who doesn't want to draw an extra card on turn 1 every game? And then it's got a good deal of 2-drops, Plated Beetles, and Vulgar Homunculi, and an Acidic Swamp Ooze. And then you got 2 Doomsayers. So you can do any of these, plus another, you can slap on draw a card on turn 3 to those effects. And that's good stuff.
Yeah, it sucks to not have Doomguard or Voidlord, but I guess that means you also don't have to run Possessed Lackey.
Yeah, the deck does not run Lackey. I have a Lich King and a Primordial Drake. It's really much less combo-y than the other Warlock decks. It's a lot more straightforward.
Seems like a mid-range deck.
Yeah, exactly. But don't mistake it for being fair.
Sure.
The
3 mana 8/8 is not fair.
Yeah, and then Hooked Reaver works really well with your hero power as well. Because you by tapping more consistently, you can more likely guarantee that you're going to get a 7/7 taunt.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess you also have access to the Homunculus and Spellstone. I guess it sucks to not have Librarian, but at least you have, between the Homunculus and Hellfire, I think the number of cards in the deck that damage you hasn't really changed, right?
There's actually also the 2 Dread Infernals.
Well, that's true. Those both ping you.
Though that, that's clunky, if you're like, I need to kill that big minion with my Amethyst Spellstone, let me quickly spend 6 on this demon that damages me. Usually doesn't work out. It does if you have 10 mana, but that is, not most of the time. And then I'm also using 2 Shroom Brewers.
Oh, sure.
And so the deck actually has a lot of survivability between the Spellstones, the Brewers, Gul'dan, and I'm using 2 Spellbreakers. I saw lists that had 1, and card's just so good. Yeah,
it seems like when you're going even, that seems like one of the biggest gains. Silence is great. It's just I guess it's sort of an innocuous effect, but it's worth remembering that people are playing like a 3-mana 2/1 that silences right now, when they need to.
Yeah, we don't get forced to do that, which is fortunate.
Yeah. That's when I was switching from like Odd Rogue to Tempo Rogue, that was another really big gain. It's just getting access to Spellbreaker.
It is just so good in a mid-range deck rather, because the 4/3 is gonna be relevant, and they're like just getting rid of a taunt can get you really far ahead, or if they commit really hard to something that's kind of your plan. Like I'll just sit here playing good Hearthstone cards that are like good and solid, and wait for them to do something fancy, and then just Spellbreaker it. That's like a classic way mid-range is strong, is because you can run cards like Spellbreaker or Rin that just your opponent can get fancy and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's nice. It seems like this is an exceptionally disruptive mid-range deck. Like, you can play the fair beat you down with minion strategy, but you also have like Rin if they're trying to go late, but you also have Defile and Hellfire if they're trying to go early.
Yeah, there's just lots of interruption, lots of really, really good interruption, and the Primordial Drake too.
Yeah, that's true. That's an excellent linking card, and like I don't think that really disrupts a lot of the cards in your deck because they're so chunky.
Yeah, these are some chunky monks. There's like Gen sitting there ready to come down on 6.
That's fine.
Yeah. So I think if Token Druid proves to be popular, this will be a good pick because all the board wipes. And then also, in particular, Defile is great because it's one of the few ways to completely get around Soul the Forest, which is like one of the really scary things that deck can do.
Yeah, that's a little reminiscent of like the old Eggs deck. Soul the Forest is a pretty cool card. So let's switch gears and talk a little bit about that deck because I don't know a whole lot about it, but I think you played it a bit.
Yeah, I basically was playing even Token Druid and even Warlock. For the most part, the two main things I was playing the past few days.
All right. Yeah, so why don't you introduce us to this Token Druid, right? Because, again, this is a different Token Druid than all the other ones.
Yeah, we can call it Wisp Druid if we want to be cute.
Okay.
But this is sort of like an unusual deck because it's kind of like a control deck, but instead of having big minions, all of its threats are spells that make a ton of small minions. But otherwise, it plays a lot like a control deck, but also kind of like a combo deck, because really what you're trying to do is make the big board and then play a bunch of Savage Roars and Branching Paths and give them all a ton of attack and just kill your opponent. And so that's the game plan the whole time. But if you need to play like the value game and make 1/1s and fight your opponent's minions and get them down to a certain health level before you can kill them, you can also do that. So it's a really cool deck, and I think it's difficult to play against, especially right now that it's new, which is one nice thing about the deck.
Yeah, it seems like I can definitely see that. It seems like Mass Dispel would be a good card to play against this deck.
Yeah.
That's kind of it, though. And it's not like, even if you Mass Dispel them, you're leaving them with like a bunch of minions. So.
That's the thing is that, so we got 2 Whispering Woods, 2 Living Mana, 2 Spreading Plague, which can potentially work, and then Malfurion, kind of. So those are the ways to get your dudes on the board. But so let's say you make a huge army. Oh, and you have 2 Violet Teacher. Sorry. So you're using 2 Violet Teacher, and you also have 2 Oaken Summons in the deck. The only other minion is, it's really slick how that works out. The only other minion is Greedy Sprite. So you pretty much always keep the Greedy Sprite just so you can guarantee what your Oaken Summons will do. But, and the Oaken Summons will not trigger the teacher herself. But still, you can quickly get to the teacher when you need to. Or at least when it matters. So you have all these ways of filling up the board. And when you try to do that, they might kill all of it.
Right.
But then you just do it again. And then they might kill it again. But then you just do it again. And usually they'll run out by the third time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And once they run out, and you untap with 6 or 7 1/1s, you can Savage Roar Branching Paths.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And
which, I mean, that is extreme. You might only have 2 of those 3, but that's going to kill almost anybody.
Yeah, that's a little bit... But, I mean, you also have, like, Power of the Wild, potentially. At least in this list that I'm looking at.
Yeah, you can also use Power of the Wild, but if you really wanted to go over the top, you would do 49 damage in my scenario. Nope, 53, because you also get 4 attacks with Savage Roar.
That's usually lethal.
Yes, it tends to win Hearthstone games. So... That's, like, the basic strategy, but then, like, one of the slick things about it is Soul of the Forest, which is, in case you don't know, it's a 4-mana druid spell that gives all of your minions, when this minion dies, summon a 2/2 Trent. So you can kind of guarantee that you'll have a board. You play Whispering Woods, get a bunch of 1/1s, play Soul of the Forest, now when they die, you'll have a new board. So your opponent will have to clear twice. And that can kind of, like, that's kind of how you seal the game. If you do that, you're usually like, I'm gonna win next turn. Because the deck's also using, 2 Nourish, 2 Ultimate Infestation, 2 Wild Growth, 2 Wrath, the 2 Branching Paths, which can draw, so it very easily has a full hand, and a lot of armor.
Yeah, I can see that. This is like a swarm deck that's a little more top heavy, right? Like, but it's nice because, I think it has more ways to threaten a ton of damage from hand, and also more ways to generate a massive board from hand than a deck like Odd Paladin, or even like Bloodlust Shaman decks from the past.
Yeah, they would always need a bunch of cards to do it, and you're pretty much always doing it with just one.
Yeah, and I guess you also have access to UI, so you can play you don't have to, like, hold all your cards in the beginning. You can actually just sort of slam them, because you'll be able to refuel later.
That you do. And you got... Swipe and Jasper Spellstone for the early game and Oaken Summons. But if you can get to Spreading Plague against any aggro deck, you basically just win.
Yeah, that makes sense. That card's still disgusting.
So it has that effect against aggro. You can kind of hold them off early game and then seal the deal with Spreading Plague. And against control, it's all about running them out of clear effects, at which point you pretty much just win on the spot.
Yeah, this looks like a cool deck. I mean, I've had the opportunity to play a little bit with Soul of the Forest in Wild, in, like, Eggs, and that card is really good. I just, like, totally wrote it off when I saw it in the list for the first time. I'm like, oh, this is just an unoptimized list. Like, there's no way this card works. But it's real deal.
Yeah, no, it's one of, like, the best cards in this deck, for sure.
Yeah. It feels degenerate when you can, like, have a board and your opponent clears it, and then you just have a stronger board.
Yeah, that's why it seals the deal, because the only option they have is to make their situation worse.
Yeah, it's really good, especially in this is, again, comparable to something like Odd Paladin or Bloodlust Shaman. You're trying to untap with a bunch of minions that can attack, and then you can just buff them. So that's pretty cool. I'm gonna have to give this one a shot. I like it.
I'm glad you think so. Yeah, it has way more game to it than it looks like at first. It just seems it kind of looks all over the place, because you're like, what kind of control deck plays 2 Savage Roars? But this one, that card isn't. I don't know if I ever played it, before turn 5, but it's really good in the deck.
I can imagine. I mean, Druid's interesting. But, like, the class decks an individual archetype can sort of run from more controlling to more aggressive, and I think that this is, like, I can see tweaking this deck to make it more reactive, maybe adding naturalizes or something, but also just running a hyper-aggressive version with, like, Power of the Wilds. It's really low to the ground. So it seems pretty cool, and, like, it has a lot of wiggle room. I mean, that reminds me a little bit of Jade Druid, which had, like, the Mark of the Lotus version, and then it had, like, the, Oaken Summons version.
Yeah, more defensive or aggressive.
Yeah.
Depends what you think you're going to see. Yeah, this is definitely a class deck, which I think is what you called it. It is, of 30 cards, 2 neutrals and 28 druid class cards.
I love it. Yeah.
The 2 neutrals are Violet Teachers.
That's amazing.
And actually, it's only got 3 minions. The only other minion besides Violet Teacher is Greedy Sprite. It's a really... But then you're playing 2 Savage Roars.
and like potentially Power of the Wild and stuff. That's amazing.
It's a really funky deck, but it's good. But so there, you can beat it with something like Defile, because that can get if you can get a 2 health minion out, and your opponent has an army of 1/1s with Soul of the Forest, you can Defile and it'll kill their 1/1s and make the 2/2s. Make the 2/2s, kill your 2/2, make their 2/2s 2/1s, and then kill all of them.
Oh, sure.
So you can get around Soul of the Forest, Defile, Godfrey, and Warpath. That is you do not want to play against a Taunt Druid or Taunt Warrior. Oh my god, that's so confusing. You do not want to play against the Taunt Warrior as token Druid.
Yeah.
Because they do have enough clear. See, most control decks don't, but those warriors, they're good at dealing 1 to everything.
Yeah, and like you said, Defile, that card just continues to be completely gross. To kind of like wipe the board for 5.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with. And so that's the fact that you can't like seal the deal with Soul of the Forest suddenly means you're like, well, you got to play a lot more carefully. And sometimes if you play the deck carefully, you're just not winning quickly enough. Like you're trying to accumulate the swarm effects in your hand while your opponent is just more quickly accumulating clear effects, and at that point, you're not going to be able to win.
Yeah, it seems makes sense. I mean, I'm sure that there are scenarios where you can run out of gas.
Yeah, that was more often how I was losing than they killed me too quickly, which I think is good. One potential tweak could be to add Sea Giants.
Oh yeah, I can see that. That card's turning up in a bunch of decks. I mean, it's in the Even Shaman list as well.
Yeah, I was not seeing any of that myself, but I see it on this list of stats from HS Replay.
Yeah, I played I played the Even Shaman deck in Wild a bunch, like before this patch dropped, and Sea Giants are just a staple in that deck. And when I was looking at the Even Shaman lists, after the balance changes dropped, and some of them didn't run Sea Giants, but I think they are starting to, because that was like when I built the deck, that was one of the first changes I made. The card is just really, really good in the deck. It's a huge payoff to having a 1-mana hero power, and I think in the Even deck in Standard is considerably weaker than the Even deck in Wild. But I don't think it's weaker in such a way that like you're swarming a little bit less. I think you can still swarm about the same amount, so Sea Giants are just an excellent payoff.
That makes so much sense. It's just like Mountain Giant and even Warlock. Like, it's a giant that 1 mana reduces cost by 1.
Yeah, and I mean, you're rarely doing something quite as degenerate as a turn 3 Mountain Giant. You're like not often doing that with Sea Giant, but it's still, it's also a little bit less important because you're generating minions with your hero power and playing minions and stuff.
It seems really good, though, because of Primal Fin Totem. I mean, it's amazing with that.
Yeah, exactly. And, just, the 1-mana hero power, it's a cool, it definitely works out. It's definitely a strong thing to run in the deck, and it's going to win you a bunch of games. Another deck I wanted to mention, where we're sort of focusing on really strong decks, is Spell Hunter.
Yeah, when I began a day, there's this hunter, time to, win because hunter's bad, and then by the end of the day, it's not happy to see hunters.
Yeah, I mean, it's, so Spell Hunter is a really funny deck. I mean, just as a history, it has a history of being a meme deck, when they were spoiled. Mm-hmm. Just, I think we all remember the reaction to My Side. Yeah,
what the...
Yeah, it was just the reaction to that card was comparable to the reaction to Purify. I think the reaction to Purify was a little bit more well placed, because the To My Side ended up being right away in a playable deck that was a fringe archetype for a while, but is now an incredibly strong archetype.
And that's a really good card in the deck.
Yeah, it's actually awesome when you play it. You have such a high probability of pulling Misha or Huffer. I mean, well, you have the probability of one of pulling at least one of them. But if you want either one of them, there's a pretty high probability you'll get the one you want.
Yeah, it's kind of easy to underestimate it. It's almost like an inflated Lost in the Jungle. Like, Lost in the Jungle at first to me was like, I can get, if I just hero power twice, I have this. Why would I spend a card on this? But ultimately, getting 4 mana worth of stuff for one is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And getting all of the effects, and then, or maybe a better comparison would be Call to Arms. It's not just that you could, now you get 6 mana worth of stuff for 5 mana. You're getting 3 cards out of 1. And that is, I think, what it was easy to not appreciate about To My Side, is you're getting 2 animal companions, that is a card. If there's a Hearthstone card, Animal Companion is a Hearthstone card. That is value, for its cost. And you get 2 of those for 1 card.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's a really good, it turns out to be a really strong effect. But
yeah.
I think the real payoff of that deck is, the Spellstone.
I was, daydreaming about that earlier, thinking, wait a minute, even if you don't play a single secret, it's still pretty good.
Yeah, it's actually, a fine rate at 0, and when you play one secret, you're getting a good rate, and, it costs 5, and the deck runs, at least 5 secrets, so you're, actually often runs more than that. So you're almost always triggering it for, with 1 stack or 2 stacks, and with 2 stacks, it's just, there are so many decks that can't beat that.
Yeah, it will lock somebody out. You know what it's a little similar to is just going wide with Grim Patrons.
Sure.
Just being I'm playing against a druid. I'm just gonna I can't combo or anything. I don't have the Warsong Commander, but I'm just gonna make a bunch of Grim Patrons and see what they can do about it.
Yeah, I mean that was a really effective strategy against tempo based decks. Back when was a deck, and even post-Nerf, post-Warsong Commander nerf, the deck leaned more heavily on that, but it was still around because that was a strong enough thing to do. So
yeah,
3/3s are big. In Hearthstone, 3/3 is bigger than any early game minion for the most part. If it's bigger than a 3/3, it's a mid game minion. So if you're playing against an early game deck, then your 3/3s are going to be gigantic to them.
Totem Golem's sup guys?
Yeah, and Totem Golem's what are you talking about? What do you mean? I don't understand.
But yeah, no, those army of 4 3/3s against a tempo deck, you might just beat them, or if they were trying to be aggressive, now they might need to completely shift gears.
Yeah. It's a pretty disruptive deck too. It's also not particularly weak to Tar Creeper because it does have a lot of removal in it.
Mm-hmm.
So it just turns out to be, the 3/3s, might just get walled off by that one card, but the deck does have the ability to kill it pretty easily. It's a surprisingly strong deck.
Yeah, I think one thing that it has is a lot of different choices on each given turn. You can choose to be more aggressive or more passive, and you have that luxury partly because of your hero power and because of kill command. You can get to a point where your opponent's taunt minions don't matter anymore.
Yeah.
And their opponent sort of can't, and if they're playing rogue or something, then they never heal themselves, that you can get to a point where you're just gonna be able to say sayonara and go over the top of any defense they put up. Right. And simultaneously you can summon a bunch of wolves and a bunch of animal companions and beat them down with those things, and you got a bunch of weapons actually. You got the 2 candle shots and the 2 eagle horn bows. And so you can also play this tempo game where you're keeping your opponent off their minions and creating your own. And you kind of every turn get to decide which way you're going to go that turn. And you kind of have an ability to change course if you have to. If your opponent plays something and you gotta game plan change, now we gotta clear their stuff and play a hunter's mark. But you always are ready once you got your opponent low enough to just be like, I'm going to kill you now. And
Yeah.
that's really good against, classes like Rogue. And then if they're playing aggressive, you're able to just kill all their stuff because you do, like you said, have a lot of removal.
Yeah, I think the flexibility of the deck is like, in general, sort of a defining feature of what separates like the decks that are viable at high level play versus lower level play. Like, but so it's a boon. It's a boon for a deck. Is like I think a deck with less flexibility that's a little bit more linear and does one thing can do really well at lower ranks and just like plow people over, but with just being faster than their decks or capitalizing on their misplays or whatever. But when you get to a place where people's decks are better on average and their misplays are less frequent, being able to react to situations and like start being aggressive in one turn notice is just really, really powerful. And this kind of and I think that's what we see like among the top decks at sort of higher ranks. They tend to have the ability to play both like from behind and ahead, and this is just one example of such a deck.
Yeah, you kind of think it wouldn't be because you're restricted so badly you can't use minions. I think a lot of, when you think of versatile cards, or giving a deck versatility, a thing that I think of is like, can I put Acidic Swamp Ooze in it? And can I put a Silence in it? And you can't do any of those things, really.
Yeah.
But it actually just is, the kind of removal it has right now is really efficient, really effective. Like, Candle Shot is really effective. And Flanking Strike is really effective in the current meta.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Flanking Strike's a really good card.
The secrets as well.
Yeah.
The ones that are available make playing against all of them difficult. Because when your opponent plays a secret, you don't know which one it is. But the ones that it could be, like a lot of the time you don't even want to attack because if it's Wandering Monster, they could just King Muckley you to death.
Yeah, I mean, Wandering Monster is insane. That card's turned out to be really, really good. But yeah, like, I was playing the deck a little bit, and just so many of my opponents would stop attacking me when I played a secret, even if it was just like Explosive Trap.
Yeah, they have no idea. It could just be a game ender, potentially. Freezing Trap can also be devastating in certain situations and just completely hose your opponent.
Yeah, so that's been awesome. I mean, I've really, I've enjoyed that deck a lot. I think it's like, the card pool is surprisingly flexible. Like, the deck has a number of flex slots and options to put cards in there. It's not like you're just sort of squeezing yourself out for like whatever cards you can fit in this deck because you don't have a lot of options. There's a lot of ways to turn this deck into a more aggressive or more reactive deck. And, it's strong. I hope to continue to see on the ladder. I mean, I think one of Hunter's problems, like, from a design perspective for a long time has been his lack of flexibility, and I think that the classes we see over and over again dominating the ladder, like particularly Druid and Paladin, are just flexible classes with like really flexible class identities. So the types of things that the classes are supposed to be good at just lend themselves to so many different ways of playing the game. I mean, we've seen Druid have both the best aggro deck and the best late game deck on the ladder at the same time.
Yeah, and not once.
Yes, yeah, exactly. We've seen this a couple times. And same with Paladin. Paladin's like, maybe one season its deck will be like a slower mid-range deck, and then the next season it'll just be like the greedy, low to the ground, like my most expensive card costs 6 deck.
Yeah, and things like Mysterious Challenger as well.
Yeah, sure.
Just how varied its strategies can be.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's cool to see. It's cool to see a deck like Spellhunter, which sort of breaks the mold a little bit for Hunter, which is like a class that is in much need of mold breaking.
Yep, it very much just got defined as go face aggro deck, and it's cool that Blizzard, after trying for a long time, finally is making it into giving it another option. Which was sort of being scoffed at for such a long time. That's really cool. Bravo to them for that. And also sort of the foresight. Well, I guess this all happened at the same time or close to each other, but the things that say you can't use minions don't mean you can't use Deathstalker Rexar, which is another phenomenal card in the deck. Huge card in the deck.
It is like when I saw Deathstalker Rexar and I imagined what kind of deck it'd be good in, it's basically this deck.
Yeah, which is when, and then I thought that, and then that, which means it's never going to be good.
Exactly, that's what I thought too. I was like, so, you're playing a deck with not a lot of minions that are you're just like, so your hand is filled with what, spells?
Like, that'll never work.
It's just the deck exists, and it's very good right now. Yeah, it is perfect in this kind of deck, because, like, now you might have some cards, some spells like removal or whatever that you were trying to play, or like flanking strike that you're trying to play just to get tempo, but now they become reactive cards because you have a hero power that can help you generate tempo. A little expensive, but, it's gonna outvalue your opponent.
Yeah, it will actually just let you win the game on its own.
Yeah, totally.
Depending on the matchup.
Yeah, I mean, all you have to do is high roll a couple times, and it's not even really a high roll. There's a lot of combinations of minions that are just almost impossible for Reprone to deal with.
You want to hear a really cool one I found out about? I was watching someone stream. You get a lifesteal minion, so they got the 2/1 leech with lifesteal, and Bitter Tide Hydra.
Oh my god, that's really funny.
So when Bitter Tide Hydra takes damage, it deals 3 to your hero, and then because it has lifesteal, you gain 3 life.
So that's just a 6-mana 10/9.
Yeah, with lifesteal.
Give me a break.
It will eat your armor.
Sure.
If you have full health and armor, it will take your armor away, but other than that...
Yeah, that's okay.
So if you can get, I guess the magical Christmas land is Vicious Scalehide and Bitter Tide, right?
Oh my god, yeah, that's really gross. Just kill something immediately and then still have a massive dude with lifesteal behind you.
A 9/11.
Yeah, never forget.
Jeez, that would be that. Yeah, so that would be a Bitter Tide Scalehide.
That's gross. So, yeah, I mean, it's cool to see. It's cool to see Hunter doing well. It's also, I mean, I think Warrior has at least one deck on the ladder right now that has multiple flavors.
Which is that?
The Taunt Warrior.
Okay, yeah, that's the only other deck I really played in the past few days. After losing to it with Token Druid, I was like, I'm gonna try this for a bit.
Yeah, there's it seems cool. I mean, I think like one thing that I've always thought about this deck is like, okay, well, the pool of cards that it has access to that are like worth playing is kind of small because it has to, jam a lot of taunt minions in the deck in order to function. So, this deck is only ever going to be good if that pool of cards is good. That's something, we've said on the show before. But I think with the addition of Phantom Militia, the taunt minion with Echo, that actually opens up a lot of slots in the deck.
That is very true.
So that makes the deck, like, the sheer existence of this card, like, because you only really need to play, like, one of them, one per game, like, obviously you're playing 2 in the deck, but, and you can discover this off of, Stonehill Defender and stuff, like, because you can do all that stuff, you don't need to just jam your deck with, like, taunt minions anymore. You can use some of those extra slots to run cards like Warpath or Slam and Shield Block and all that stuff.
One problem that you definitely mentioned having with Taunt Warrior in the past, which I also definitely had very frequently, is that you just kind of run out of cards.
Oh, yeah.
You just play your stuff and then just have an empty hand and nothing to do, and no way to complete your quest. If you drew enough Stonehill Defenders and discovered enough Stonehill Defenders off Stonehill Defender, you might be okay, but you would definitely run out of stuff. And when I was playing the deck now with Phantom Militia, never had that problem.
Right.
It just completely... It's like you said, just by putting the 2 copies in your deck, there's like no way you're not going to complete the quest. It gives the deck flexibility, like we were talking about before. If you don't get the right draw, it's not as damning. Before, if you didn't get enough taunt minions early on, then you just kind of slumped into nothingness. But now that never really happens.
Yeah, it's nice. I think the deck also has access to a lot more early game plays, so like if you just look at the curve of the deck, it's mostly 4 mana or less.
Yeah, that's a really cool thing about the deck is how, it like doesn't really look like it's this late game deck, but it absolutely is. And it just has these silly guys. They just get in the way. You just play them to die. These taunt minions.
Right.
There's nothing. You can use a Lich King. I think I was using a Lich King, but you don't even really need him. You don't need anything usually terribly powerful. You would be happy playing Stonehill Defenders all day, because eventually you get Sulfurious and you just beat everything.
Yeah, it's really strong. Like it's cool to see the deck look like this, because this is different than how it's ever looked, which is something I just thought would never happen, like I said. And like you said, I think that some of the so we both pointed out, I think some of the problems the deck had were shored up by the existence of Phantom Militia, both in terms of deck building constraints and in terms of like how you play. Because now you're just not trying to play on curve, you can actually like hold some cards in your hand, or have more reactive spells which just sit in your hand and wait for your opponent to do something. And it's a faster deck now, so like one problem the deck used to have is that the aggressive decks could just still punch through it, because some of your taunt minions cost 5. So if they just, if they just destroy them with a card, like a single card, and then attack you with the rest of their board, you're sort of SOL. But now all the taunt minions cost 4 or less in the deck, or most of them do. So it's, you're just it works really well. The deck is like pretty good at what it's doing.
Yeah, you would put yourself like in really vulnerable positions with the old deck, because you'd have to like turn 5 play a taunt guy, turn 6 play a taunt guy across your fingers, turn 7 play a taunt guy across your fingers, because you had to be getting all of this value out of these taunts and hope you had them at the right time. Whereas now, turn 3 you could play Phantom Militia, turn 6 you could play 2 Phantom Militias, turn 9 you could play 3 Phantom Militias. So the curve is all filled out nice by this one card, so you don't need to have all these big things that are vulnerable to removal and silence.
Yeah, for sure. It's pretty cool. I like the way it looks now. I'm happy to see that deck do well. I like the quest mechanic in general, and I think it's something that was like really underpowered. So It's cool when you see quest decks. Actually, speaking of quest decks, there is an Amara priest deck going around.
I have heard tell of this, using like Zola, essentially.
Yeah, Zola and Archbishop.
Oh my.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if all of the decks are running Archbishop, but I know that some of them do. So, it seems pretty cool. I don't know a whole lot about the deck or how it plays, but I think it's like a quest priest deck is trying to get Amara and then win in the late game. And yeah, I mean, if you play Amara and then you play Zola, like, that's really hard to beat. Yeah,
I mean, you can potentially do 80 damage, but there's also 2 8/8 taunts for 5.
Right, yeah, that's exactly right. And, the deck is running, it's priest, so it's running heal effects, like Divine Hymn is still a really good card. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if this deck's typically running that, but it does have the option to do so. And a lot of the Death Rattle minions in the deck are sort of replacing themselves, so that's really nice. Like, they're drawing you a card, or they're giving you, like, in one of your opponent's cards with Crystalline Oracle.
Mm-hmm.
So this deck looks really interesting. I have the Priest Quest, so I definitely want to give this one a shot. Don't have Archbishop. I actually pulled a golden one and dusted him. But
for shame. I could never dust that. I'd be like, time to play some Priest.
No. No. I mean, I think that was a different time. I'm like at a time now where I don't think I would dust stuff like that, but at the time, I think it was totally correct.
Fair enough. I'll give you this one.
Yeah, dusting my golden Archbishop. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to craft him, though, so we'll see if this deck can function without him.
Well, you could use, like, Baleful Banker.
That's true.
Just put another Amara in your deck.
Oh my god, that's really funny.
And that'll help with fatigue.
Yeah, for sure.
One card. Or if you really need 2 cards out of your banker, you can bank your Elise.
That is true. Yeah, most definitely.
That might just be way better than Archbishop.
It could be. Yeah, Baleful Banker. Or I mean, even just something like Elise. It changes your game plan a little bit from something more fatiguey to something more beatdowny.
Fatiguey. Oh, and then you must be using Shadow Visions, right? That's also a combo.
Oh yeah, totally. Oh yeah, that's really good. I'll just try that. But yeah, it seems like a cool deck. I mean, we haven't really seen Quest Priest be a serious deck ever.
No, never.
Cool to see it now.
Definitely.
Yeah, I have not seen a whole lot of it on the ladder, but, heard legends of it. It's slow. I think slow decks tend to be underrepresented relative to their power on the ladder, just because the way to get legend is optimizing like wins per minute, really, or wins per unit time, and slow decks, even if they have a high win rate, are not winning often. So.
Yeah, it's also, just might be unknown, and it's unrefined.
Oh, that too. Yeah.
There's other decks that are probably more refined. It's, just easier to pick up one of those. Maybe as people stream this deck, which I'm sure will happen, we might see it more. Do you know if it's using Rotten Applebaum?
It is, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a good card in there. Yeah, that's true. I mean, the lack of refining on a deck, so whether a deck is unrefined or not, has a much bigger effect on reactive decks, I think, or slow, long-game decks.
Mm-hmm. This is also true. Like, the fact that we don't know, like, do we use Archbishop, Alpha Banker, Elise? Like, if there's someone who who might not have all the legends, like you said, it might be like, I'm just gonna play even Paladin, or Odd Paladin, rather.
Yeah, I mean, so that's like the counterpoint here, or like the example of the opposite case, right? Because Odd Paladin's a deck where there's like so many different lists, and they all have similar win rates, and like they're all running just garbage because the hero power is so good. The deck is like basically 2 level ups, 2 fungal masters, and then like Lost in the Jungles, and like just a bunch of other cards.
Baku.
Yeah, Baku, and then that's it. Like whatever you put whatever other cards you want in the deck. It's actually really funny. In Wild, the Odd deck has both Quartermaster and level up, but it also has like a bunch of other much stronger cards like Muster for Battle.
Oh my.
Yeah, but it can often feel like the deck is pretty much just like Baku, level up, Quartermaster, and then a bunch of other cards that don't matter. It's like
sounds about right.
Yeah, you're keeping one of your buff effects in your hand, and your whole game is just a lot like Token Druid. You're trying to untap with a bunch of Silverhand recruits.
Yeah, I've not been seeing much I haven't been seeing any Paladin.
Yeah, so that was that's something that we sort of have not mentioned a whole lot right up until now. I also have not. I think the Call to Arms nerf was like huge.
Yeah, it obliterated even Paladin, like we mentioned, and a lot of other Paladin decks are just weaker now, and other stuff got more powerful.
Yeah, so something we said during our set review is that the Paladin cards in the set look somewhat weak in Witchwood, and I think I remember saying something like Call to Arms was enough power for a few sets.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that at the time that was definitely the case, and it was obviously so, but now that Call to Arms is gone, I think that the class is really suffering from lack of playable cards.
Yeah, it's tough to even imagine a deck besides an aggressive one at this point.
Yeah, it doesn't really have a whole lot of late game payoff. So we will see what that deck ends up doing.
Yeah, other classes just have so much power late game. Like the other slow decks,
yeah,
like Druid and Warrior, Shaman. The Shudderwalk Shaman deck. That's gonna do a better job late game than anything Paladin can do.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, Paladin's interesting. It kind of like it rarely has total late game decks. Like the latest it goes is just a sort of top heavy mid range deck. But the other than that, I think the latest late game Paladin deck has been anything.
Yeah, N'Zoth Paladin too.
I see. I don't think I really spent too much time with that.
Yeah, that was just a slow grind. Wait until you get N'Zoth, play N'Zoth, win.
I see. Yeah,
so it was actually even slower than Anyfin.
Yeah, Anyfin that's a really cool deck. I would recommend anybody go play Anyfin Paladin. It's fun. I loved playing that deck.
Would you also recommend Anyfin Shaman?
Not with the same vigor, but yeah.
Not with the same sincerity.
Yeah, right. Not. I would be slower to say that in a public venue. I guess this is a public venue. Anyway, I recommend it. Give it a shot.
Wait a minute. Somebody's gonna hear this?
So the other class we haven't really mentioned here is Mage. Yeah, Mage has been in sort of a weird place throughout Witchwood, I think.
Yeah, like Gen and Baku both don't seem to be doing anything for it.
Yeah. It has the big spell control deck, but there have been so many other like decent late game deck options that it was sort of choked out by Q block. And at this point, I think it's doing okay.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't not mention it because I think it's weak right now. It might be fine. I don't have any numbers on it right now, but when I would play against a control mage and they get Frostlich Jaina early, that can definitely be really tough to beat. And there's also like a tempo mage deck that was pretty good. I don't know how it's doing now. I mean, one nerf that definitely worked was the nerf to Caverns Below. I have not seen any Quest Rogue.
Yeah.
And I tried to play it a little bit, and it did not do very well.
Yeah, I think that deck was on the edge anyway. Like.
Yeah.
So
it was already borderline.
Yeah, it wasn't ever really like an amazing deck in this in the Witchwood metagame. I think it was just like okay, but they showed it. I don't know. We talked about this. It's just when it was okay, it was still too much.
Yeah, and so one of the decks that the Tempo Mage was good against was Caverns Below Quest Rogue, which is no longer around, so it's one less reason to play it.
Yeah, for sure.
But it still might be good. I have not really touched Mage lately.
Yeah, me neither. I'm not super into the big spell mage control deck. I feel like I think it's like a fine deck. I think it's strong and it does really well against minion based strategies, which are most decks in Hearthstone. But I think there's just more interesting slow decks to play, so I haven't really touched it. But if that's your bag of chips, go for it. Frostlich Jaina will win games.
She is mighty.
Yeah, definitely.
It just doesn't. It seems a lot less consistent than a lot of the other control deck choices to me.
It also turns on a bit later.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to offer anything in place of what you lose by playing that class right now.
Yeah, I think. I think Frostlich Jaina is really good. I think that's like a pretty awesome late game grind that can win even against control decks. So I think that's a really big payoff. But I do agree that and I think like it has access to just a larger volume of board wipes than some of the other available decks, except maybe Warlock. And I think that they're lower quality than Warlock.
Well, yeah, but also Warrior.
That's true. Yeah, Warpath and Brawl are both really good. And
that's when I'm like, well, I mean, I played Taunt Warrior and even Warlock and not Mage.
Yeah, I'm not really too into that. I don't know. I think I played enough Control Mage when Burn Mage was the thing in Ungoro.
Yeah, that was fun.
And Reno Mage was really fun too. That still is a really cool deck.
Yeah, friggin' Manic Spellcaster.
Yeah, and I mean having Ice Block and Reno Jackson is just a truly disgusting combo.
That's another reason why I haven't been touching Mage.
Yeah. Yes, the Ice Block in the room.
That was definitely my favorite Mage card.
It's hard to dislike it unless you don't play it.
Yeah, that was my strategy.
Yeah.
To play it.
Right, exactly. So it was very good. But I think that's all the classes.
Yeah, I think that like Palin kind of seems to not be in a great spot right now, maybe, but for the most part, everything has a deck and everything's doing pretty well.
Yeah, for sure. It's again, we'll see how things relax as things are like more refined and optimized and the stats come out and show which are the top contenders.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
at least right now, yeah, things are pretty balanced.
That is it's a good thing for things to be after balance changes.
Indeed, that is the point.
That's a really good sign that I think they did a good job. The time will tell though if it holds up. Like you're saying, it's too early to really start praising them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, things can always just be degenerate and bad. But
that's a great attitude. but it's definitely pretty exciting right now.
Yes, I like it.
I still think that a lot of classes could have room to just like find a new deck too. So.
Yeah, totally. I mean, again, things are young, so we might see some changes.
Yeah, the even shaman list I'm looking at looks so awkward. I bet that's going to change a lot.
That was my feeling as well. I held off on touching that deck because it felt so unoptimized, and just like there's so many different ways you can do this deck, and I want to see which one's the best.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be something people probably start playing more and gets figured out. It's using Hagatha. That's so funky.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about it, Hagatha.
Yeah. Oh well.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Anyway, if you want more of our content, you can find us on lastturnhs.com. We have links to all of our stuff there, which includes our Twitter, twitter.com/lastturnhs, or facebook.com/lastturnhs. You can also find us on iTunes and SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/lastturn. On iTunes and Google Play, just search Last Turn HS or Last Turn, and you'll find us. We have a YouTube channel where we upload our podcasts, and a few other services. You can find us on things like Pocket Cast and Stitcher and Beyond Pod. So, yeah, come check us out. Listen to the rest of our stuff if you haven't. We like to think that we talk about interesting things, and things are related to Hearthstone. If you disagree, come tell us on our Twitter account.
Man, I think that's got to be our new slogan.
We think we talk about interesting things.
We like to think we talk about interesting things.
It's even more edgy.
And they're about Hearthstone.
It's a concise sentence. It carries all the meaning that it needs.
It's really, really quite committed.
Well, so it's easy to walk back. It's like the perfect political platform.
It's like, oh, hey, I didn't say it was really interesting.
Right, exactly. You'd be like, wait a minute. Now, let's not get too hasty. But anyway, we will catch you guys next turn.
See you next turn.